community. We Are Nevada with your hosts, Leonard Cardinale and Nick DiArcangelo.
Come on, rise up. Come on, rise up. Come on, rise up. Come on, rise up. Come on, rise up.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the We Are Nevada radio show, airing here on KLAV 1230 AM every Friday at 6 p.m. with your co-hosts, Nick DiArcangelo, and joining me, Leonard Cardinale. Leonard, happy Friday.
Good evening, Nick, and what a week we've had.
Oh, that is true. And we want to welcome everybody here to the We Are Nevada radio show. You can hear us on 1230 AM, or you can hear us streaming live on the internet at www.klav1230am.com. And, of course, we welcome all calls. If you want to learn a little bit more, ask us questions about the legislative session or some of the things that we're talking about, give us a call here in Las Vegas at 702-731-1230. Or you can call us if you're outside of the area listening to us on the internet. You can call us at 866-820-5528. So give us a call, and we'd love to hear your views and your insight and some of your questions about any of the bills or things that we're talking about here on the show. We have a ton of things to talk about. Last week on the show, boy, we burned up half of it just talking about news and the latest of the legislative session. I expect this week will be pretty much the same. We have some of our fun segments like Meet Your Legislator, Bio, and of course we'll talk a little bit about PERS and some of the interesting bills that came down the pike. But let's start off with this week. We had like you said, an interesting session. Tell me a little bit about Public Employee Lobby Day. You were there and you were kind of running the show, Leonard.
Yeah, the words dumped in my lap doesn't really quite. I'm going to say it. I'm going to put it out there. But we would like to thank Elena Guevara, that is our organizer for We Are Nevada. She really came through and put together a really good program. But before we go into that, I would like to send a shout out to our northern partners who said they will be listening to us.
All right.
Streaming live at www.klav1230am.com. So all our friends up in Washoe County and Reno and Sparks and Carson City and Carson City firemen came by and said hi, and they met several of them. They were really nice. So we have a Public Employee Lobby Day, and we meet for orientation in the morning. We lobby for a couple of hours. We have a press conference at 12 o'clock, and I did the introductions. Lynn Warney, the president of NSCA, the teachers, spoke and gave a great speech. I don't know who wrote the speech, but it was a really good speech. And, and then after that, Senator Tick Segerblum spoke a little bit about public employees, and then we finished it up with Danny Thompson from the AFL-CIO. And as you know, Danny was, he was really on a roll yesterday, and he really was beating the state up and the legislators and just people in general about education and being last in the graduation rate, being last, the highest in teacher-to-student ratio, and
well, that was big news this week.
Yeah, and the funding, and he really went into a lot of detail.
The graduation rate, did you see that? There was a discrepancy. We'll call it a discrepancy, although if you look at the comments online and some of the local newspapers that covered it, that they talked about that, in fact, the graduation rate is not 66%, which is still just disgraceful, that it's actually 61%, that there were some things that were not included in the figures, and that the figures would not be pre-released before the state actually releases them. They're going to make sure that the state actually releases them first so that they're not embarrassed like this again. But still 66%, 61%, this is not a number that Nevadans can live with, that's for sure.
Yeah, and Danny really hit him hard and got a loud round of applause. We followed with some lunch in the courtyard over the legislative building, so we'd like to thank the LCB and the state of Nevada for letting us use that area over there. And then back for lobbying, and then at the end of the day, from 5:30 to 7:30, went to the governor's mansion. And I'd like to thank Assemblyman Lucy Flores for coming out and making a few comments. She gave a very good speech, and it was interesting. Something she said that I thought was very interesting. She said that all of these cuts that the public employees are suffering, she said, you know what, they're not raising our taxes, but those are taxes. And she said, and you have to characterize it that way and make people understand that even though you're not getting your raises and they're giving you cuts and they're cutting employees, that is sort of a tax in her opinion. And then Senator Segerblum came out and gave a great speech. The Chief of Staff, Gerald Gardner for the governor's office, came out and gave a speech. And then, of course, Senator Segerblum I made a comment to Assemblyman John Hambrick, who's a Republican and a conservative. So then at the end, I invited him to come up, and that was funny because he was in our setting with our people, and he gave a nice speech and was very tried to bridge the gap between the conservatives and the progressives and the regressives and
Sure.
the kinds of things and throwback. So he gave a great speech, and all in all, it was a very good day, and I think everyone was impressed with how well it went off.
Well, also, I have to say that I was up there on Wednesday, and I know that Thursday was the same, but there were a lot of members, public employees that attended, that were up there lobbying last week. Especially, I saw healthcare representatives that were there for the safe staffing bill and also for in opposition to the UMC privatization bill. So, and that's really what it's all about the frontline workers who are up there, who are making an impact and making a difference, speaking with legislators and lobbying and letting them know that what impact these bills would have, both positive and negative. And that's one of the most important things that public employees can do and our listeners can do is to get involved. And we talk about that every single week, about this opportunity that we have to make a difference and make an impact. And don't be afraid to get onto that legislative website and cyber lobby, because there's lots of opportunities for everyone to get on there and make a comment or just weigh in on your support or opposition to a bill. It makes a difference, and the legislators are certainly paying attention. Oh yeah, that's right. And
they tell us they do read the comments. And
while I was in the building, I'll tell you, someone came up to me and they were talking about the show and that they were listening to the show, and so they're our voice is definitely getting out there. It's being heard in those hallways, both online, in person, and through the airwaves. And there's an impact that's being made. So that was
what
very
was
nice.
that?
Wow, it was a strum from the heavens.
And did you know that NPRI showed up last night, and for some reason they didn't decide to come to the event. And also at the end of the night, I forgot to mention that the Majority Leader, Senator Mo Dennis, did show up, who's always a gentleman and always a pleasure to speak with. And for his position, he is a very humble man, and we appreciate him showing up as well.
All right, so let's take a look at some of the things that happened this week. This was a really important week in the legislature. I believe it's day 68 or 10th week in the 77th legislative session. As the legislative session is only 120 days, so we are chugging along through the back half of the session. And today is an important day because today is the last day for many bills to win approval in committee or die.
There was an article about zombie bills, and we had a discussion about that. Yes, somebody used, I need to find it, but somebody used the expression zombie bills. So zombie bills are bills that are dead, but they're not really dead, like people, right? It's somebody who's undead. So it's a bill that has died, and then it goes somewhere like a purgatory almost, where it could be on the chief of staff's desk. It could be in a drawer somewhere. It could be on the, somebody's floor, and it's just kind of hanging around. So be aware of those. And our progressive friends did mention that they had a very good week. The same-sex marriage passed with the amendment.
Yes.
They got the sex education out of committee. The driver's authorization was approved on the Senate side and moving forward. The mining reclamation was approved. Mm-hmm. Syringe access was approved. Homeowner Bill of Rights was approved. Election modernization, vote centers, and voter registration deadline extensions were all moving forward this week. Wow. And that is, let me tell you something, I have to say that might be a historical week for the progressives, unless I miscalculate.
Yeah, no, that's really great. I was reading about the plan to legalize gay marriages in Nevada. So, this is a long road that has to travel, because this is a constitutional issue. And but this is a Senate Joint Resolution SJR 13, and it'll now go on to the full Senate for consideration. So this constitutional amendment was changed from a simple repeal, and the resolution as amended would replace the repealed section with new language requiring the state and to recognize marriages and issue marriage licenses to couples regardless of their gender. So, this is it's significant. This is very significant. We'll definitely be keeping an eye on this one.
They were very happy, and in the national news there was some buzz about the IRS denying that they use emails to target taxpayers. Did you happen to read anything about that?
That's interesting. So how does that work? They use emails?
Well, the Civil Liberties Union said this week that internal documents obtained through a Freedom of Information Act request revealed that agents were told they didn't need a warrant to root through emails, texts, or Facebook pages of people it's investigating. The ACLU and other privacy groups disagreed with the rationale and saying bypassing warrants, the tax man is violating the Fourth Amendment. So this is something that we need to keep an eye on. And of course, tax day is coming up. So
Yeah, thanks.
I would say whatever they did, is probably over with. But I would like to say that Vanessa Spinazzola from ACLU and Stacy Shin from Progress from PLAN, Progressive Leadership Alliance, have been doing a bang-up job, and they've been pushing a lot of stuff through, and probably had a lot more success this year than they've had in previous years. And of course, Brian Fady from Progress Now has been right on top of it.
Well, now what died this week, and the bill to legalize marijuana for recreational use did not make it.
There were some people that were very upset, but the bill that did make it through was the medical marijuana, where they now have it passed through the Senate side of the House that they can start to fund and build facilities to store and to house marijuana for people who can legally obtain it, which in my mind is probably a good thing because it's counted and it's weighed on the way in and on the way out, and they haven't worked out where it's going to be cultivated and who's going to grow it and store these places. But we're working in that direction. But I think that it's probably better than having people with medical marijuana cards buying their marijuana from the black market, because that causes all kinds of problems.
Well, I don't know. Did you see the story in the news last night of the guy, the house in Henderson that caught fire, and it was a pot growing, and they had an interview with the guy, and the guy said, "Look, I had a business. I had a very successful business, and need to pay my mortgage, and so this is what I turned to." And it was just wild.
So do you think most people felt badly, or they were like, "Really, dude"? I mean, I didn't see the story, so I don't know if it caught on or not.
I don't know. I don't know, but I'm not sure how people felt either way. But it was interesting, because you normally don't see that. You normally don't see the guy who comes out and says in a very reasonable, almost like these shows like Breaking Bad or something like that, where they say, "Hey, look, this was the reality. I needed to pay bills, and this was the opportunity that I saw, and so I took it, and this is what I did, and unfortunately." And so some of the experts, the law enforcement experts, were talking about the fact that these types of operations frequently cause house fires, and it is very dangerous. And it kind of goes to what you're talking about as far as legalization and for medical purposes. And
let's regulate it. Let's make some money off of it. Let's tax it heavily, and move on. Now they're estimating $300 to $400 or more dollars, in revenue. We don't know, because we really don't know how much these facilities will take to set up and how much money they'll produce, and what the return is on it. But I think it's probably not a bad idea to regulate it, since some people can obtain marijuana legally. And I think next session, I think there's going to be a stronger push to legalize marijuana, but that's kind of dead, along with being able to campus carry on firearms. That bill, Assemblywoman Michelle Fiore was really pushing that one forward as hard as she could.
She did. She had some interesting comments in the newspaper where she said that, and this was in the Review Journal, where she says the death of campus carry is obviously a partisan decision. And she said, "It motivates me to increase our Republican influence." It would have been a different story if the anti-gun bills were off the table as well as pro-gun bills, but that doesn't seem to be the makeup here. And look, this is a bill that would have allowed concealed weapons permits, people that have concealed weapons. And actually, something? I want to make this correction here, because in Nevada, it's not a concealed weapons permit; it's a concealed firearm permit, because you can't carry a knife. You can't carry a concealed knife legally here. It's a firearm. It's only pertaining to guns. So it would allow concealed firearm permit, people that have that permit, to carry their firearms onto state college campuses. And that bill is dead. And and this is something that we've been hearing a lot about with the tragedy in Newtown, about this idea of having people with concealed weapons carrying in college campuses and also carrying in schools. And that is, the Nevada State Education Association's position is that that's not the answer. And the answer is early intervention and putting the money towards mental health programs and things like that. And not
that one still hasn't been worked out. That one is coming. Also, there was a bill heard in the Senate actually it didn't get heard earlier in the week, to make the emergency declaration to suspend contracts. That was not even heard this week. And then, of course, the Attorney General's opinion came out and basically said that, you have to have a natural disaster, military disorder, and that financial emergencies do not apply to suspending contracts under NRS 288. The More Cops passed with amendments. So AB 496 was passed through the Assembly, and there was one nay vote, and I believe that was Assemblywoman, the Speaker, Marilyn Kirkpatrick. And basically what they're saying is they're proposing that in order to get more police on the streets, they want to raise the Nevada sales tax by 0.15, bringing it up to 8.25 instead of 8.1%. Mm-hmm. And the problem was... several years went by and we had an economic downturn. So a lot of the police weren't hired that were supposed to be hired. And these cities and counties are holding on to surpluses. And now they want to take the restrictions off so they can basically use the money to supplement their budget however they so choose. And then the reporting requirement is supposedly still intact. And they want to go for the rest of the quarter cent, which I guess would be another 0.10% in, I believe it's 2016. And then Veterans in Politics, Steve Swenson, put forth an amendment to say that 7% of the money collected has to be used for cameras for all police officers. And that was more of a conceptual bill. I didn't really read the details on that, but that from what I understand, that amendment did pass so that if the More Cops money goes through and they have these hundreds of millions of dollars coming in, 7% of it, according to what passed, has to be used for cops to wear cameras, like kind of on the front of their shirt,
right,
with audio and visual details of everything that happens. And I'm sure that this one's going to heat up, but it did pass the Assembly side and head for the Senate side. And as far as the reporting and the requirements, I think that that still needs to be discussed. So that was relatively big because, and you know what, it didn't even make in the news. Like, I'm looking in the news, I'm like, this is big. They're proposing to raise the state sales tax to the tunes of hundreds of millions of dollars over the years. And I'm thinking, people, why do you think it wasn't in the news? What do you think so hush-hush about it? Why are they, why is it like happening?
There's a lot going on. I was reading an article today, a commentary and opinion piece on why it's interesting. There's actually an article about why certain news isn't being covered this week. And it varies from an abortion trial to a lot of different things. And I think there's you actually before the show you kind of made the point where you said that things are moving at a really fast pace, and there's an awful lot that's going on,
faster than I've ever seen.
And especially in this first half of the session, and it's difficult to sort out what to cover and how to cover it and how to get it out to people. And so it's not easy. It's certainly not easy from a journalist perspective, and also think about this week. I mean, this week. So we had this deadline that's today, and there were work sessions that were going on.
There's a committee deadline coming up too, right? Isn't that the 18th?
Yeah, I'll check the.
I think they have to be out of committee by the 18th. So next week's going to be really, really desperate. But they can attach an exemption to it, and you may say,
"Yeah,
Len, what's an exemption?" Well.
I'll say that. Len, what's an exemption?
So AB 342 is a bill put forth by Assemblyman Kerner, and Nick and I we beat it up a little bit, and we're going to get into that a little bit later. But I wanted to, before we get there, I wanted to explain that if a bill ends up having a fiscal note, in other words, if it's going to cost the state money or there's a money value based on it, in order to pass it through, then it usually gets an exemption, and then it goes to Assembly Ways and Means or Senate Finance Committee or a joint committee so they can talk about the money aspect of it and whether or not that's worth it. And then they may work session it and then send it back to the House that send it to them. And there's a lot of different ways that can go. So, but it is also a tactic. I don't know how you look at it, but can that be used as a tactic to keep a bill alive that really shouldn't be alive?
Oh, yeah. Well, definitely. So I brought up the calendar here. And this is, again, I can't tell people enough. This website, LEG, or short for legislative, leg.state.nv.us. So much information on there. So the calendar, we've got the committee passage today. That was the big deadline, right? The first House. Then April 23rd is the first House passage of these bills.
Oh, so we got some time.
Yeah. And then you go through to the rest of the calendar. But no, I totally agree with you. That's definitely there's so many different little loophole, not loopholes, but you know what I mean. There's rules to the game to keep things.
The expression is there's 1,000 ways to bring a bill back to life.
Yeah,
you know I've heard that several. I don't know if I know 1,000, but I could probably name a good couple of dozen easily. And also in the news, in the Las Vegas Sun today, they had an article that said union leaders balk at North Las Vegas's budget cutting plans. City overinflating fiscal problems, labor leaders contend. So the city of North Las Vegas is saying they're short about $18 million, maybe $20 million, and that's not including if they're on the hook for the money from the lawsuit, this emergency declaration. Right. They told the Committee on Local Government Finance that could be another $25.2 million. That's on top of the $20 million, and I told that it didn't make it to print, but I did tell the newspaper there when they interviewed me that on behalf of the Police Supervisors Association that we were really looking forward to John Lee coming in and taking over as mayor because we think we can definitely work with him. And obviously, Sherry Buck is on her last few days, and she's telling the news that we'll have to wait and see, and they need more money from the employee groups. And we just like to have some leadership in there, people that can figure out some kind of way to balance the budget without having to always go to the employees, because there's thousands of cities out there, and they're figuring out a way to do it. And I'll read a quote in there. We absolutely think the city's hiding the ball. They're moving money around so they don't have to show us. This is my quote. The police supervisors do not trust the city when it comes to negotiations. So we're putting it out there, and we're saying, we know that you're moving the money around and you're not telling us how much you really have, and they have vacant funded positions. So the reason I bring it up is as the weeks go by, this is something that's probably going to heat up and become more interesting as time goes by. I haven't seen a whole lot of news coverage like there was last time. For some reason, the news, like I said, seems to be interested in some other legal issues right now. But this could be coming to the forefront as the weeks go by.
So before we move on, I just want to talk about the bill process and where we're at in this bill process. And again, there's a great little flow chart on the legislative website that talks about this, and I'm sure everyone out there already hears the how a bill, the old song on the how to make a bill. But so this is
just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill, and I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill.
That was a great cartoon. I still remember that.
Everyone remembers the cartoon, right? So this week we had really late sessions, right? The legislators and everybody that has a fight in this game is up there and sitting in on these sessions, and not just the hearings, but also the working committees, right? And the working committees are really important because this is where we hear whether or not these bills will get a recommendation to move them along, written or pass it with certain amendments, right? And so they're working committees because they're working on the different amendments on these bills to get these bills to where they need to be. Because a lot of times these bills are introduced and they're written up, and there's consequences and there's things about them that maybe overall it's good, but there might be things in there that might be harmful. So there's a lot of work that's done, and all that work is done this week. And we sat in on some of those, and they're really long meetings, and they're they just go on forever. But they do get a lot done, and some good things come out of them. And as we know, some of them, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, survive, and we didn't really want them to survive.
And some of them make you scratch your head and go, what did they say?
Yeah,
what were they thinking?
Sure.
But one thing that's going to happen is once these committee deadlines come in the end of April here, and there's no more getting them out of committee, things are going to really heat up, because then they're going to start working on the budget. And when they start working on the budget, they have to balance the budget. That's when all of these big dollar items are going to come into play, and people are going to start wondering, how do we balance this budget when we're short, I don't know, what did they say, a couple of $100 million or so. And so they have a lot of money to make up, and then we were asking, what are you guys going to put toward education? Because I don't see any commitment to education other than the I think it was 10 or 12 or 14 million for English.
Well, there's
learning
roll-ups.
program.
Look, there's money that's been there's money that supposedly has been committed, but a lot of the money that there's the governor at the start of the session said I think it was 143 million or something like that. But it's roll-ups and things like that. To your point on the budget differences, they start. The deadline for that is on May 6th. They start resolving budget differences, and then and that's very close to the end of the session, because that only leaves about a month.
Yeah, and that leaves a big question in my mind, Nick. I have to tell you, because I've been watching very closely, and I can tell you I don't know if they have a plan for that yet, because there's so many options for how they're going to balance that budget, and neither side wants to give. The people that on one side, they know they don't want to give anymore, and people on the other side don't want to give, and they don't know where to get the money from. And now they have this bill out there, and I'll get the number for you in just a second, where they're proposing that the state employees maintain their cuts. They keep their COLAs, and they keep their merit increases, and they don't pay them their longevity, and then they have to take furlough days again. And what I don't understand, the economy is recovering, and yet Nevada is still like acting like, oh yeah, we're still running out of money. We were hit so badly. There was other states that were hit worse than us, and they're recovering.
You know what? Let's look up that bill, and we'll talk about it later in the collective bargaining segment. But right now, let's hear about This Week in Labor History. At the Minnesota State AFL-CIO Convention, Hubert Humphrey, the 38th Vice President of the United States, said, "The story of the labor movement needs to be taught in every school in this land. America is a living testimonial to what free men and women, organized in free democratic trade unions, can do to make a better life. We ought to be proud of it." This Week in Labor History. April 8, 1918. President Wilson establishes the War Labor Board. It was composed of 12 representatives from business and labor and co-chaired by former President William Howard Taft. Its purpose was to arbitrate disputes between workers and employers in order to ensure labor reliability and productivity during the war. It was disbanded after the war in May 1919. The decisions of the NWLB generally supported and strengthened the position of labor. Although it opposed the disruption of war production by strikes, it supported an 8-hour workday for workers, equal pay for women, and the right to organize unions and bargain collectively. Although the NWLB did not have any coercive enforcement power, public opinion and support from President Wilson generally ensured compliance with its decisions. In general, the relative strength of organized labor in America grew substantially during the war. Union membership almost doubled after the formation of the NWLB. Of note, the AFL membership rose from 2 million in 1916 to 3.2 million in 1919. By the end of the decade, 15% of non-agricultural work was unionized. April 10, 1997. Dancers from the Lusty Lady Club in San Francisco's North Beach ratify their first ever union contract by a vote of 57 to 15, having won representation by SEIU Local 790 the previous summer. Several grievances led to the unionizing effort in 1997. African-American feminist sociologist Siobhan Brooks, while working at the club, had noticed that African-American dancers were discriminated against and filed a complaint. The precipitating event was the installation of one-way mirrors in a number of booths, which also existed in the Seattle branch, resulting in some customers taking photos and videos of the show. Among the leaders of the organizing drive was the stripper Julia Query, who documented the efforts on video, resulting in the documentary Live Nude Girls Unite, written and directed by Vicky Finari and Julia Query. After a vote of the employees, the business organization, by the Exotic Dancers Union, an affiliate of the Service Employees International Union, then a member of the AFL-CIO, the Bay Area Sex Workers Advocacy Network provided website support for workers' unionization efforts, which helped to garner public support for the workers, as well as inquiries from other exotic dancers and sex workers throughout the country. Former Lusty Lady employee Siobhan Brooks commented in a 1997 article that in some cases the media misquoted us as being the first strip club to unionize. But the first strip club to unionize was Pacers in San Diego. However, Pacers Union Hotel Management Employee Local 30 negotiated an open clause in its contract. It was a right to work shop. No requirement that employees should join the union. So the club recruited workers and discouraged them from joining the union and were able to decertify the union. The club later became a worker-owned cooperative. April 12, 1900. Birth of Florence Reese, active in Harlan County, Kentucky coal strikes and author of the famed labor song, Which Side Are You On? Reese was the wife of Sam Reese, a union organizer for the United Mine Workers in Harlan County, Kentucky. In 1931, the miners of that region were locked in a bitter and violent struggle with the mine owners called the Harlan County War. In an attempt to intimidate the Reese family, Sheriff J.H. Blair and his men, hired by the mining company, illegally entered their family home in search of Sam Reese. Sam had been warned in advance and escaped, but Florence and the children were terrorized in his place. That night, after the men had gone, Florence wrote the lyrics to Which Side Are You On a calendar that hung in the kitchen of her home. She took the melody from the traditional Baptist hymn, Lay the Lily Low, or the traditional ballad, Jack Monroe. Florence recorded the song, which can be heard on the CD, Coal Mining Women. And this ends our week in labor history. Let's take a listen now to a rendition of Which Side Are You On, performed by the Dropkick Murphys.
Ladies and gentlemen, barely standing in this corner after years of seeing their wages lowered, their homes devalued, and the worst employment and economic conditions since the Great Depression, weighing in at 99%, the middle-class families of Nevada. And in this corner, consisting of 42 members of the Assembly and 21 members of the Senate, meeting every 2 years for 120 days, every odd-numbered year, the people who have the opportunity to improve life for all Nevadans, the Nevada State Legislature. Let's get ready to meet our legislators. Who is Assemblyman Randy Kerner? Mr. Kerner is a Republican who represents Assembly District 26. District 26 covers southern Washoe County, Nevada, from just below the airport and straight down to Lake Tahoe. Assemblyman Kerner is sponsoring a bill which would lay the groundwork to destabilize public employees' retirement system, undermine a predictable and stable system of retirement, and hand over an accountable system to Wall Street banks and their shareholders. Randy Kerner was elected to the Nevada legislature in 2010. He lives in Reno and serves on 3 committees: Assembly Education, Assembly Taxation, and Assembly Ways and Means. Assemblyman Kerner is 67 years old and was born in California. His listed occupation is a business executive. In the 1990s, Mr. Kerner moved to Reno and took on the position of Vice President of Human Resources for International Gaming Technology, IGT. According to his website, it was his impressive experience in the corporate, financial, and human resources world that led Governor Gwynn to appoint Kerner to the Public Employees Benefits Program Board, making him one of just 2 private sector members to be a member of the board. During the last legislative session, our Public Employee Coalition identified Assemblyman Kerner as a legislator to watch, and in the first 2 weeks of this session, the 77th legislative session, he has proven once again to be intent to diminish the rights of working Nevadans. Assemblyman Kerner can be contacted through the legislative website www.leg.state.nv.us or by email randy.kerner, K-I-R-N-E-R, @asm.state.nv.us. Or you can reach the Assemblyman by phone 775-852-3858.
Let's talk about PERS, man!
Pension talk.
Just total destruction. $9 out of $10. That is how much between the people who participate in the public employee retirement system and the return on their investment. That is how much is paid for to keep that system as healthy as it is, one of the best in the country. And that public employee retirement system, promise by Nevadans to make sure that after years and years of service, public employees have a decent and fair retirement, is under attack and is being threatened.
So Assemblyman Kerner's bill, Assembly Bill 342, was considered exempt this week, and
Right.
the only person that can do that is a legislator. So I don't know who exempted it, but it's now being held in hyperspace, and it's going to probably go to Assembly Ways and Means. I don't know where it's designated, but let me just read to the listeners what this says. This is one of the last bills that's left in existence this session that really attacks PERS, the public employee retirement system. And keep in mind, people just want to retire. You know, they want to work for 25 or 30 years. They want to give it their all, put their life on the line. Then they want to retire in dignity, and they want the promise to be kept that they were going to get a retirement, and that's really all it's about. It's an act relating to public employees' retirement, providing for the establishment of a hybrid retirement program for certain public employees, requiring the program to include a defined benefit plan and a defined contribution plan, setting forth the required provisions of each plan, requiring certain public employers under certain circumstances to make additional contributions to the public employees' retirement system to reduce the unfunded liability of the system, and provide other matters properly relating thereto.
Yay, our favorite little phrase, that's for sure.
So people are, right now they're glazed over and they're saying, all right, Len, what does that mean? So he wants to take about 2/3 of the retirement program. Remember now, let's remind the listeners, one of the top 5 in the country since 1985, a 9.5% return. It'd be hard to find another system, another program in the United States that has done so well, and it's now holding $28.4 billion in that program. He wants to take 2/3 of the program and he wants to put it into a 401k style investment program. Right. And then you might say, well, how are they going to do that? Well, last time they wanted to change the entire program from a defined benefit to a defined contribution, which is like a 401k style program. The last time they did a study, that would have cost the taxpayers $1.2 billion. So he's saying he wants to do 66%.
Say that amount again.
$1.2 billion.
Billion.
Did you buy an Echo machine and I didn't know?
No, I just want to make sure everybody got that.
Yeah. So if he's going to do 66%, this time, I asked him in the meeting, I said, well, what is going to be the transaction fee? Is it going to be per transaction? Oh, yeah. And what kind of rate are our fund managers? Because, they're going to bring in a whole team of fund managers. What is is it going to be 0.1% or 1% or 2%? And he said they had not worked that out yet. And so I thought that was a little unusual because if you haven't worked...
How did he not work that out?
That's what I'm saying. You're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. And he says, we haven't quite worked... I'm sure. And then he said, I'm sure it's not going to be that high.
With his background, look, and we did that little bio beforehand, but with his background and as a HR executive and everything that he's done in his past and his long history in the corporate world, he's really going to try and convince us that he hasn't done figured the money yet on how much it's going to cost. And well, we know that any attempt to change the PERS system, like you mentioned, the $1.2 billion, but this proposal, as small as it is, right? Because this is they lost the full frontal assault on trying to change a system that is working, so they're deciding now to nibble away at little changes, and even this little change is going to cost tens of millions of dollars to implement. And that's not including the stuff that we're talking about now as far as, well, how much are these fees going to be from when you make a trade and stuff like that. We're just talking about, setting up the structure to put it into place is going to cost tens of millions of dollars. So, again, why are we doing this? Why are we trying to attempt to change something that is working and working well, is recognized as one of the best in the country? And why are we trying to change something that's going to break the promise to retirees and end up ultimately, like I've said before, is a slippery slope towards completely destabilizing the system.
Right, and these differences of opinion are really like a little bump in the road, right?
Yeah.
There's not the mountain. The mountain that they're going to have to climb is actually the public, right? Because we did, the We Are Nevada Public Employees Group did a study,
right,
and we did have, we did a poll, and the poll is showing that over 70% of the public, I want to say 72% of the public, believes that public employees should be able to retire in dignity with a retirement. That's what they were promised, and in all fairness, they should keep their promise. So that really the mountain they have to climb is really not crossing swords with us and differences of opinion and trying to win over Senate members or Assembly members. Really, the trying to deal with the public, eventually, I think in the end, is really going to be the part of this equation that they are not going to be able to overcome.
Well, they're working hard to distort facts and to make it sound like
Correct.
It's a system that's
Correct.
in trouble. And that's going to be a liability to taxpayers. But again, it's a huge distortion. It's just not true. And it's a system that is very, very stable, and it's a system that protects taxpayers because it's stable. And and in fact, they don't have to bail it out. And in fact, so much of it, like I said at the beginning of this, that $9 out of $10 is taken care of not by taxpayers, but by the people who are contributing to these pensions, and also the the return on investment, which over 25 years is 8-9%, something like that.
Well, over 25 years, it's 9.5%. But let me ask you something: how would you, or the listeners? We'll ask the listeners as well, and they can call in and tell us. How would you feel if you had an investment, a mutual fund, or you have some kind of government bonds, or let's say a little more aggressive, so you have stocks or annuities, and so you have these investments, and they're doing pretty good, right? Yep. You've been around, you've had them for 25 years, and you're a good 9-10% return. You got that money, and you keep it, and you're really comfortable with this, and somebody comes up to you and says, Nick, I'm really worried about you. And you go, what? And they go, I'm really worried about your finances. And I know that you have put a lot of money away and made 10% return like over the last 25 years. But you know what? We calculated your money, and we see an unfunded liability, so the money could run out. But this is what we're going to do. We want you to give us all your money and let us manage it, and then we'll make money and you'll make money. But if it goes badly, I'm sorry, but we're just the money managers. So you're obviously on the hook. And then my thing is, the way I look, the reason I bring this up is because I would say, why are you looking? Are you in my system? Are you part of these mutual funds? Well, no. Do you benefit from it? Well, no. Is it your investment? Well, no. So everyone that's trying to fix our system and save us is not involved in the system, and they're certainly not entitled to a retirement. So the question is, why are they so aggressive about trying to get into our funds and quote unquote help and save us when we're not asking to be saved? We're fine.
That's right. Well, this is something we'll be talking about every single week, because this is the type of thing where, again, it's not just doesn't just affect, and this is the case with a lot of these issues, doesn't just affect the public employees. It's something that affects all Nevadans, and this definitely we'll be watching it.
Jeez,
Nick, what are you laughing at?
Oh man, where do you get a load of this? I'm checking out BDRs on the state legislative website.
Well, let me take a look. Wow, we need to share this with our listeners. What should we call it?
Well, I think you got to call it what it is. Irma, take it away.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce this week's up bill draft request.
Every week I hear that, and I always wonder, how do we get away with that?
Hey, it was beeped out. It was
yeah, I know, but and then I think to myself, how do we get away with that? And then I look at some of these bills that come across the table, and I think, how are they thinking they're going to get away with this? So this
in my free time, that's what I wonder.
This week, the Nevada State Education Association's Government Affairs Director, Greg Stevens, is doing a great job up there in Carson City.
He is.
He called me up and he said, Nick, you gotta get this information out, because it's just unbelievable. And it's actually 3 different bills. So AB 373, SB 241, and SB 445. AB 373, SB 241, and SB 445, and NSCA, they oppose. We oppose these 3 bills because they're a little shell game going on here. They're trying to make it sound like these bills will. Well, I'll tell you, but
well, you're the teachers of Nevada. We're going to help you.
Well,
how are you going to help us?
Actually, this one is even worse than that, because this one is saying to parents and to students, well, this is what we're going to do. These 3 bills are going to create a 501c3 corporation. And this corporation is going to take contributions from private businesses. And it's going to be this huge pool of money. It's really going to be great, because what's going to happen is that the public is going to have access to this money. And it's going to create scholarships. And students who want to attend private schools, K through 12 schools, they can tap into this money. And instead of going to public school, you'll have access to this scholarship money so that you can go to private schools. And on top of that, it gets even better, because these businesses that contributed to this 501c3, they're going to get a tax credit, and so that everybody's going to win. This is a win-win for everybody. Right?
And when you read it, you go, "This is awesome!"
Right.
So then what happened?
Well, this is what ends up happening, right? And it's kind of interesting, because we did a show a while ago about St. Paul, Minnesota, and about back in the very first strike in the 40s and 50s in teachers, and it was about funding issues, right? So what happens is, if businesses in Nevada start taking money and putting it into this pool, and they get a tax credit for it, where's that money coming from? Well, that money is coming from the general fund. Well, if money comes out of the general fund, then who does that affect? Well, it affects everyone that gets money from the general fund, like the education funding, like public schools and everything else that gets funded by the general fund. So now if all of a sudden you have businesses getting tax credits and money coming out, you have a hole, right? And we've heard from the very beginning of this legislative session that we don't need any more holes in our budget. Not especially when it comes to education.
And education is very important.
Yeah, and education is very
important on both
important.
sides.
And we saw a long laundry list of different programs that will help education, and they're good programs. And we've heard everybody say all these programs need money. But now, if you're creating a system that allows businesses to take money out of this fund, then really what you're kind of doing is you're creating a system that will benefit a few kids, but the majority of our students will suffer because of decreased funding to public education. And really,
can we say which kids would suffer the most? Is it the lower income?
Yeah, you know something. I'll
say it.
Middle class, lower income, and they're disguising this. They've dressed this up as scholarships, because scholarships sound great. Everybody wants a scholarship, but really, when you take off the clothes of this, what it is a voucher. It's the dirty little voucher system, and vouchers do not work. They undermine the accountability for public funds, because you're privatizing the schools. You have businesses that are taking money out. There's the schools now are operating with their own autonomy on how they who they're going to teach, what they're going to teach. They get to decide who's going to be in this school, and kids in the public school system and the general public and students are just going to lose out.
So if you don't get a voucher, they say, "Oh yeah, we'll get back to you next time." And here's what's really going on: these voucher programs, they want it for food, they want it for education, they want to track it, and they want to make sure that you apply for your fair share. And then they want to privatize some schools. And the way I look at it, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is almost like a pay-as-you-go, the way I read it. I read some of these bills, and I'm like, what they're really saying is they're saying that, you should be able to afford to send your children to a private school, and you pay as you go. So the more money you pay, the better education you get, but it never addresses what do you do about the people that can't afford to pay for public education because they can't barely put food on the table, and they can't make their car payments, and they're just trying to get through the day. Right. And then you're saying, well, you know what, it would really help the economy if we can charge them and privatize schools so that we can charge them to go to school.
It's worse than that, really, because an argument may pop up where they say, well, no, these are scholarships, and people, they're going to get the scholarships, and then whoever wants to go to a private school will be able to go to this private school regardless of their income. But the thing is that, unlike public schools, private religious schools, they can, and they do in some cases, they discriminate in admissions, and they'll discriminate on basis of prior.
Can I mention how they decide? Here in Section 1, the department must approve or deny applications for the tax credit in the order in which the applications are received by the department, and number 2 is authorized to approve applications for each fiscal year until the total amount of the tax credits approved for the fiscal year is $5 million. What do they do when the $5 million runs out? Because with the amount of are we not the 5th largest school district in the country?
That's
so $5 million isn't going to go very long. And this is Senate Bill 445, and it was submitted to the Committee on Education, and in quotes it says on behalf of the governor. And I understand that some of these there may be some good ideas here, but are they saying it's like a lottery? Is that, or they're saying it's in the order that the applications were received?
And that I've seen that, and that does exist. Look, and so the fact is that people don't like this idea of vouchers and this voucher system, and really what we should be doing is improving our public schools and funding to public schools and making sure that scarce tax dollars that which we're already facing and which we just talked about as far as funding and revenue and things like that, and how are they going to come up with the money, that needs to be fixed first.
Well, there's a private donor part of the bill in 445 is relying on private donors to subsidize some of this money, and the question came up, who decides who the private donors are? And isn't that something that you would probably want to have in place? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm thinking that you'd want to have that in place before you make it law, correct?
I know a lot of these things need to be worked out, right? So this is something that we'll definitely be keeping an eye on. This will be something that will go on through the whole rest of this session, and it's something that to protect our public education system we need to pay attention to and speak up against.
Run for your lives! Collective bargaining is under attack!
Don't they know we're just families trying to get by? Why are they attacking collective bargaining? We've never hurt anyone.
It's the best. I love the baby crying, Nothing gives a sense of havoc and crisis like a baby crying.
In the background while we're getting bombed. So that was a little dramatic, but, we're trying to make a point here. Let's talk about
Senate Bill 483.
Senate Bill 483. So over the last several sessions, the state workers have really they've lost a lot, I have to say. And some of them are telling me that we have AFSCME, which is a lot of state workers, and they're telling me that some of their employees are down 30% in the last couple of sessions, just in their pay and their wages. And then obviously they have furlough days. A furlough day is when you are forced, let's say you work, you get paid every 2 weeks and you work 5 days a week, so that's 10 days, and you get paid for 10 days work. Well, a furlough day means you only work 9 days, which means you get the day off, but you also don't get paid for the day. So it cuts into your paycheck. And some of them have to take 12 and 14 or 15 or more furlough days per year. So this Senate bill proposes that the state workers continue to work without getting longevity, without their merit increases, with the pay cuts. And it also has a provision in there that says that if I read it correctly, if you're like in public safety, or if you're in a job that is mandatory and you can't take furlough days because there's not enough of you, or because the public safety would become at risk if you were to take those days off, that there's an automatic 2.3% pay cut that you have to take, and up to 2.5%, and that's involuntary. That's because you can't take the furlough days. So how does this tie into collective bargaining? Well, as you know, most public employees do have collective bargaining, and the state workers, if you don't know, go by the NACs, the Nevada Administrative Code, and I think 284 has a lot of them for law enforcement. I'm not sure what the other ones are, but in other words, in order for their collective bargaining per se to change, they have to go to legislature, and the law has to change in order to make their life change with regard to pay and benefits.
Well, and look, and just taking a step back, we've done every week we do the This Week in Labor History, and the way I see this is that this is just another example of, management that's working really hard to strip away benefits and things that have been long and hard fought for in this country, with regards to labor.
Well, I don't know if there's going to be enough time or enough momentum in this session to actually fight that, and of course our heart goes out to our state employee friends, and at a time when people are going broke, I did see in the newspaper that the superintendent, Pat Sikorsky, will receive a 44% raise immediately, which what was the amount that he was getting paid? It was like a 180 or 190 per year plus benefits. So you figure if he's $240,000 a year, that's $20,000 a month.
Well, this has been a jam-packed show. I just want to invite everyone to make sure you join us next week. We're going to have a special guest on, Nevada Justice Nancy Saida. She'll be talking about
Chief Justice
Law Day Live, which brings the State National Awards for the past 2 years, and it's a really good program. She'll be on the show to talk about that. And thanks everybody for tuning in. Leonard?
Oh, I'd like to announce that we did put our new website up, and it's totally interactive, www.wearenevada.org. You can blog, you can make donations, you can go on and send us a note, Facebook, Twitter, everything.
All right, good night.
Have a good night.